me start again, shall we? I know you know that one. I'm always saying take two. Well,
Yeah.
James, it is such a pleasure to see you. You are a very well-known actor. You've been in some huge Hollywood films. You've even played Star Wars's Obi-Wan Kenobi. But for anyone watching, they might say, Ewan McGregor, I nearly did the accent there. Ewan McGregor looks like he's changed faces. Can you introduce yourself and explain?
Yes, well, I guess I'll say hello there as Obi-Wan Kenobi. Now, so I am a voice actor, and so you probably know my voices, but maybe not my face. And that is the beauty of being a voice actor is I get to be so many different characters, and I have been throughout 30 plus years in Hollywood working on projects as Star Wars as Obi-Wan Kenobi and Jedi Master Plo Koon, but I've also been The Flash and Green Arrow and Green Lantern, and I've been Johnny Test, who's 11 years old and totally awesome. Fred Flintstone, yabba dabba doo. I've been, let's see, oh gosh, I've been Hiccup from How to Train Your Dragon whenever Jay Baruchel isn't. I've been Gingy, the gingerbread man, or I've been Great Scott, Dr. Emmett Brown for Back to the Future. Well, wait a second, Doc. I've been Marty McFly and Stuart Little and all these other characters from Michael J. Fox. So I get to be all sorts of different people in my day-to-day life. And in The King of Kings, I get to play, gosh, I think there's about 8 or 9 characters. I'm credited for at least 6 of them. And we had a blast doing it. It's been about 6 years I've been involved on this project.
It has angels and wicked kings, jealous rivals and miracles.
Well, I was seeing that you were doing this multi-rolling in The King of Kings. But can I ask you first, before we dive into that film, quickly, what is your favorite voice that you've ever done and why?
I get asked that, and I try to say, especially as a person of faith, I feel that I am so blessed by God to be able to do what I do, what I've always loved and wanted to do. Since I was 4 years old, I knew I wanted to be a voice actor. Most people wanted to be famous and be on camera and do all that. And I do some on camera work, but voiceover has always been my dream. So I say a prayer of thanks every time I'm doing any character. So I always say, whichever one I'm voicing at the time is my favorite. So I hope that's not a cop out, but whoever, so if I'm doing Obi-Wan Kenobi, well, then of course, Obi-Wan is my favorite. If I'm doing Christopher Walken, then, wow, it's crazy, but he's my favorite. If I'm doing Captain Jack Sparrow, mate, well, then Johnny Depp would be my favorite, right, Savvy? So I just love doing all of them. And it is just a great privilege and honor to get to do voices and kind of, open that door of imagination for people.
So do you have the film introduced to you and then you go away and sort of develop that character? What is the sort of characterization process for you?
So being a voice actor, that's another little thing that's very different than the world of Hollywood for on-camera actors who they'll get the script, they'll get a description, they'll get all these things, and they'll get to spend time. Voice actors, we are pretty much thrown right into it. Most of the time, you don't get the script until you walk in the room, and you have to just be able to go with it. Star Wars, of course, is very top secret. A lot of NDAs, non-disclosure agreements and things. And so we would walk into the room when we did Star Wars: The Clone Wars, and I've been Obi-Wan for 23 years. And I would say most of the time when I voiced Obi-Wan, it's either the first, second, or third time I've recorded the line because I'm just reading the script right then and there, usually. So not a lot of time to develop the characters. Now, with The King of Kings, I was able to come in and work with Jamie Thomason, who was the voice caster and the voice director for the film, and work through it. Now, so 6 years ago is when I started on it. And I started by doing the scratch tracks for them. So they will bring a voice actor in to record basically the whole film. So I voiced Jesus, I voiced Charles Dickens, I voiced the devil, I voiced all the apostles and stuff originally. And then thankfully they kept me on as, like I say, several of those characters. I'm Matthew, Philip, Thomas. Am I Thomas? I doubt I'm Thomas. No, I see.
Yes, I've got you down as Melchior, Thomas, and young James as well.
I was doing my doubting Thomas joke, but and
Oh,
then
sorry.
gotcha.
A bit slow there.
No, no. And then, yes, Melchior. Melchior is, of course, he brings frankincense to the baby Jesus. And then I get to play young Jesus, 12-year-old Jesus, which was a great honor. And so, and many other characters, Malchus, who gets his ear cut off by Peter. And then the man who gets lowered down through the mat and gets healed by Jesus, pick up your mat and walk. And then I'm the scribe to King Herod. And so I just had a lot of fun doing a lot of voices in it.
So, how would you say for somebody who enjoys doing a bit of characterization with their voice, they've got that ability to have sort of intonation and inflection in their voice, but they don't know how to sort of imitate or develop these different voices? What would you say is the starting point?
I think the starting point is something that a lot of people are not used to when I ask them this question. I say, do you like the sound of your own voice? Most people say no, they don't, because they hear it through their head. We have this great bass cabinet, so we hear ourselves bigger and deeper and more bassy than everybody else hears us. And then when you record yourself and then you're like, that's how I sound. Most people are shocked when they hear themselves, right? So I always tell people, get used to the sound of your own voice. Then you will be able to do everything with it because you won't be in your head about it. And so I'm so used to hearing myself because I spend my days in little padded rooms talking to myself that I know what I sound like, and I'm past it now. So now I can take it and turn it into other things. So that's kind of the key for me.
That's very interesting. So, you've obviously taken on this role or these various roles within King of Kings. Do you ever find that sometimes you're slipping into the wrong character? How do you stay focused on one?
Well, again, the grace of God, that is all thanks to Jesus giving me a weird brain like that. I always picture it like a little old tape recorder in my head. And so I'll picture the character and then the voice comes out. And so I've been pretty good about that, about being able to, if I see, so if it's Matthew was one of the apostles, he had a voice here. And then Thomas, Thomas was a little more doubtful. And so so I just picture the character and then out it comes. So I don't know. It's the grace of God.
You obviously had a talent from when you were young. I think I looked somewhere and saw that you were using your voice in that way from a very young age. So,
Yes.
James, can you let me know a little bit about your background? Where did you come from and your life story?
It's kind of a fascinating story. I'm actually writing about it. So I was born and raised in a place, Santa Barbara, California.
I was in LA recently. I was in
Oh,
California.
you were? Single mom raising three kids, and I was came from a divorced family, but I always wanted to do voices, and I didn't really know the Lord. I was raised in more kind of New Age religion and things like that. But then all my friends were Christians, and then my wife was a strong Christian, and we met in high school, and so I came to know the Lord in my teen years, and then in 22 was when I gave my life to the Lord, but I'd always wanted to be a performer and I always knew I could act and do all of that, but I didn't know exactly. There's a story that goes even deeper. At 42, I found out the man I thought was my father my whole life was not my father. And in fact, my real dad did exactly what I do for a living. He worked in radio and hosted TV shows and did voices and had an ad agency. And so it was in my DNA and I had no idea. And that's the funny thing is the way God works is there's a whole journey on that. I lost my voice to black toxic mold back in 2005. And if I had not lost my voice to the mold and I had not been experienced to all those things, I never would have found out about my real father because it led me down a path. And that's the way God works. So it all kind of unfolds and unravels into all these beautiful things, but it's all because of the grace of Jesus.
That's awesome. And that must have been a very scary time because that's your career as well, having that black mold. And I love the way that God brought something beautiful out of it. But
Yeah.
through that time, if you felt that your voice was gone, how did you cope with that? How did you face that? And how did you then strengthen or get to the point where you can use your voice again?
I mean, it was a lot of prayer and it was a lot of work. I went and the doctors wanted to put me on all sorts of medicines, and I chose to do a more holistic route through prayer, really praying about it. And we had always tried to be as holistic as we could, but I found a macrobiotic diet, which was really, a lot of times used for folks with cancer and such, really helped get my health back, start getting my voice back. And I worked with a fellow by the name of Gary Katona, who is a vocal coach. And he has kind of a different way rather than usually we speak through the mask for theater and stuff. His is all about retraining the vocal cords and building them up as muscles because they're muscles. And so I worked with him for a time and rebuilt my voice. But it was really the grace and miraculous touch of God really in bringing the voice back to a place that's even stronger now than ever before and understanding that mold got me sick, but it allowed me to learn more about my body and how to eat and live a healthier lifestyle. So again, when we're in a struggle, we think, oh, this is the worst. And then he brings us through the other side and you go, oh, wow, this is the best. So that's the beautiful part about it.
You are definitely a glass half full guy, not a glass
I try
half
to
empty
be.
guy. I love
I
that.
really try to be. Yeah.
And so, do you have any tips that you could give us? What would be good to sort of strengthen the vocal cords? I know that I interviewed an artist, she had had thyroid cancer and she had had to work through, but I never got to ask her, what would be those exercises?
Gary Katona, you can go to garykatona.com, Katona. Gary has a wonderful technique, but it's about scales and vocal warm-ups, just like a singer would do. And so I do these. I start in the morning with them. I hum. Look, I also only drink like room temperature water. I don't usually. I'll do a spot of tea every once in a while, but
You have to have tea.
voice tea. But for the most part, I try to take care of my voice as best I can. I don't do any dairy. I don't do sugar. I don't do alcohol. I don't do caffeine really. And I eat a whole foods diet. That's helpful to the voice, but also vocal training, exercises, and then cooling your voice down at the end of the day as well is very important to a voice actor or to a singer.
As your voice is perhaps aging, is
Mhm.
that affecting, the sound, the depth, the tone of your voice? And
Yeah, it's interesting. I hope it isn't. I still am playing characters like Johnny Test, who's 11 years old and up there, or voicing young Jesus. Again, the grace of God, I have the ability, but I think I keep it pretty plastic by doing these exercises, by not exposing myself to, things like smoke or drink or stuff. Those things are a little harder on the voice. And as we get older, they get that. You do naturally get some resonance in your voice as you get older. And my voice does have more resonance now than when I was in my 20s and I can hear it. But when I play characters like Ratchet and Clank and stuff, where I've been playing that character for 20 years and it's my voice, sometimes they'll be like, oh, you bring it a little more up into here, James. But so I just have an understanding of how my voice works and really just play that the best I can. And I think, if you take time to hear yourself and listen and get used to your own voice, that helps as well.
well, I think that's some great tips there for anybody. Make sure your voice is exercised, strengthened, and you're eating and drinking well. Maybe not the sparkling water that I like. It makes you burp.
I do
It's
on the
not good
weekends.
in an
I have
interview.
sparkling water on the weekends. I do. It's a treat.
But how have you aligned your faith with many of the films and the kind of environment and the characters that you've perhaps had to play? How do you work? How do you kind of move through that?
Oh, it's a great question. And it is so 30 plus years working in Hollywood and secular Hollywood, but being a person of faith, I've always been very open about my faith and I've never strayed away from it. And it also helps kind of define the roles I choose and stuff. I always have tried to choose family friendly things that I know my daughter and I could watch together and such. But I also have just been very prayerful about it. It's funny though, God has seemed to close doors and he kept me in the secular world for most of my career. And it's only been in the last 5, 6 years that he's opened these doors to these wonderful Christian projects that I've been involved in. The King of Kings with Angel, and then another project with Angel Studios called Gabriel and the Guardians, which I've been very blessed to be a part of. I play several characters in that. And I work with my Star Wars castmate, Matt Lanter, who plays Anakin Skywalker, the chosen one. I get to work with him in that one. And then there's a show Butch Hartman has created. Butch Hartman was, of course, the creator of Danny Phantom and The Fairly Odd Parents. He's a man of faith as well, and he created a show for preschoolers called The Garden, which is coming out on Angel Studios app very soon. And I play Lenny the Lion and Lucy the Lamb, Christina Malizia. We play the two characters in The Garden. And then Mike Naraki, who created the VeggieTales, co-creator of VeggieTales, he's created a new series called The Dead Sea Squirrels, and I get to play a character in that. And then I've even had fun doing some live action stuff. There's a movie out called American Miracle coming out very soon where I play Daniel Webster. It's a live action about the providence of God on America. And then a film I wrote, directed, produced, starred in myself called Hidden Blessings that is a story that basically is a modern day telling of the prodigal son story, and it's available on Redeem TV. But yeah, so I've been able to do a lot of faith-based stuff in the last few years. And I'm really grateful to Jesus for opening those doors for me to be able to talk about it and to talk to you today about it. It's so fun for a Hollywood actor to be able to say the name of Jesus and talk about a movie, The King of Kings, the greatest story ever told, without it being, like, oh, you can't say that. I love it.
So, what has been perhaps the most embarrassing moment throughout your career? I know, talking to any creatives, we've all had different experiences, whether it's, on set, on stage, whatever it is.
I try to embrace the embarrassing things because I really try to keep myself humble. It's like before we started today, I said prayers, Lord, keep me humble. Don't make this about me. While I'm sharing about my voices and all the stuff I do, it's fun. It's got to always be about Jesus. So I always try to stay humble about it and laugh about those things. There's always goofy things that happen when you're in sets and laughing and laughing over lines that you shouldn't be laughing over. But gosh, I'm trying to think of anything really embarrassing that has happened. I can't. Nothing springs to mind that was like devastating, but
I know
but
lots of people often when they're mic'd up, they forget they've got their mic on and they go
oh,
out and say some embarrassing things, or I've
oh,
fallen down the toilet when I was getting ready before going on stage. These things happen.
you were actually, yes, that is actually what I was about to say is a hot microphone, as we call it in the business, is the one thing you have to watch out for the most. And I think, especially when you're mic'd on a wireless mic and then you go to the restroom, those are the ones that you worry about the most. And so I will do voices for them while I'm in there. I say, well, okay, I'm going to at least give you a little Obi-Wan Kenobi as I wash my hands. So I try to make the most of it. But yes, you said it exactly. That's what I was going for.
I just think it brings us into that sense that we have a humanity, we are fallible, but it is the King of Kings. It is Jesus who is the one who is infallible. And throughout this process of, your life of working in that Hollywood space or of working on some of these faith-based films, what has been perhaps in recent years or throughout your journey, something that has really changed you personally through your work and having to walk, this faith line, as it were?
Yeah, I think, having the boldness, stepping up in the boldness of Christ and going, it's okay to talk about him. I have a podcast that I do. It's called Talking to Myself on my YouTube channel and such, and wherever you podcast. And that's where I started going, I'm going to talk about my faith more. And the outpouring of support for that by my fan base was so remarkable and was a real turning point to go like, this is what people want. They get excited. It's exciting when you learn that somebody in the Hollywood world is of faith and they love Jesus. That's exciting. As believers, I get excited about that. When you hear Chris Pratt is a strong believer, you're like, oh, that's so cool. And so I love that I've been able to be vocal about it and that people have embraced it and have embraced the King of Kings and are excited about it, that I'm getting to talk about that. It's really fun on my social medias and stuff going on. Hey, at the King of Kings premiere, and people are like, yeah, that's so cool, And so I think it's just been inspiring because of everybody. All the fan base has made it inspiring in that way.
So, talking of the King of Kings, what is your favorite scene or your favorite moment in the film?
Man, there's a couple. One, I will say, obviously, because I'm blessed to be in it. It's the scene with young Jesus, 12-year-old Jesus, where Joseph and Mary are looking for him, searching for him, and then he was in the temple, teaching the teachers, and that was a favorite scene for me to record, just because it was a great honor, but also because I got to kind of, I don't want to say ad lib but it wasn't written in the script. They just said Jesus is teaching. And so the director, Jamie Thomason, was like, well, James, what do you think? And he knew I was a person of faith. I said, well, he should be reading the scriptures. So I pulled from Isaiah and I pulled from some of the scriptures where he is speaking about the Messiah coming. And so if you listen carefully, you'll hear those as Joseph and Mary are approaching and he's teaching the Gospels. So that was one of my favorites, but I love the scene where Jesus is baptized. And then there's this great, beautiful moment. The filmmakers did it to where, he's underwater and there's this brief pause, this moment, and it symbolizes our death and our resurrection. He's completely still underwater for a moment. And then he emerges back out. And then the dove and the father saying, this is my son in whom I'm well pleased. That is, I think, the desire of my own heart, certainly the desire of so many of us, to hear God say that I'm pleased with you. You've done well. And that he said that of his son, who is him, the Holy Trinity all together in one, which is hard to grasp and understand, I know, but I think the film really portrays it beautifully.
And as you're saying it, I'm seeing both the visual and the sound and the power of those two working together, because you have this stillness as Jesus goes down, and the camera angle that they've used is actually under the water, which is unusual. You don't normally go under the water for a baptism, but you're seeing him immersed. And then, as you said, throughout this pause of seeing the beautiful kind of visual, the aesthetics, and then you're hearing the voice.
Yeah.
And that's a powerful moment to hear that voice.
Yes.
So voices, we don't sometimes, we can take them for granted. We don't really use our ears sometimes as sharply as we do our eyes. So I think it's really poignant. But you are obviously listening to lots of voices. I don't know if when you were doing these multi-rolling for the King of Kings, whether your family are getting, irritated or whatever, hearing all these different voices. But two questions quickly, one is, how are you preparing? Are you going around speaking that out loudly? But the second one I was going to ask is then, throughout hearing this multitude of voices, because you must be going through them and practicing them in your head.
Yeah.
How do you hear God's voice speaking to you in the midst of all those voices?
Oh boy, yeah, that is that's that still small voice. It is the pause and the smile of Jesus. I think I hear a lot. And when he goes, yeah, you got it. It's okay. I'm with you. I'm with you. Because it's usually me and my ego, and all of us, are so caught up in, I want to do right. I want to do it right. I want to get it right. And so when you pause and listen for that still small voice, then he allows the other to come. And so, yeah, I do walk around the house doing voices sometimes. My daughter is 20 now, but she's grown up with it. And her and I actually did a movie together called Animal Crackers. It's on Netflix.
Nice.
And she did the voice of, she was John Krasinski and Emily Blunt's little girl in that. And then she decided, voiceover is not for me, but she got to do a couple of things with me. And she loves when I do the voices. And my wife, she's my high school sweetheart. We've been married for it'll be 34 years this year. And so she's grown up hearing me do voices as well. And so they help me, and they'll say, we like that one, or we like that one, or yeah, that's good. But I'm just blessed to be able to make my living doing what I've always dreamed of doing. And that is, again, the grace of God.
That is so beautiful. And do you have something that God is kind of really stirring in your heart right now that you'd like to give someone, whatever it is that he's taking you through or speaking in this particular time, or if you have a go-to scripture?
Oh, well, gosh, for now we see in the mirror dimly, but then we will see face to face. Now I know only in part, then I will know fully, even as I've been fully known. That's 1 Corinthians 13:12. And it is a wonderful, powerful verse to me. I'm a painter, and the movie I mentioned that I made is called Hidden Blessings, and in it I play a painter, and I play this painter that is a believer, and he paints scripture, and that's because that's what I actually do. I paint scripture all the time, and so people ask me that, but I love that verse because we don't know all of it, but he does. And he's holding us, and he's caressing us, and he's holding us. As you know, in the movie, there's that wonderful scene where Walter is picked up and caressed by the Lord and held. And we are in his arms constantly, and we just don't realize it all the time. So I would just say to everybody, know that Jesus is carrying you through these storms in life. And whatever it is you're going through right now, it is because he's building up new muscles that you didn't know you had and making you stronger. And he loves you with more love than you can possibly fathom. And so that would be my words to everybody.
That's beautiful. And as you're saying that, it's reminding me that actually we see in part, we don't know that bigger picture. And the fact that, can you imagine if Charles Dickens knew now, it took 85 years before this kind of book or this, few chapters of this story that he wrote for his children privately have been brought now into the public.
To share this spiritual story with her children.
Tell him a great story about forgiveness.
As a way to teach him to bond better with his kids, to use his storytelling nature in a way that connects to them personally.
This story is about the King of Kings.
It was published in 1934. So it's taken another, a long time.
He wrote it in 1846. So, I mean, it's amazing that almost 200 years. You're right.
We can't imagine, can we?
Yeah.
And yet God is now using those words. So we don't know how many words we've spoken or what we've done that may influence in the future. And I'm sure what you're doing now and bringing these voices to life, bringing these characters, because there's power in the word. And as you speak out of a spirit and a heart that is aligned to, God's word and what he wants to speak, I think in projects like The King of Kings, we are going to receive, and the audience are going to be touched in a spiritual way beyond what they can imagine. So have you got any final words before?
Well, bless you for saying that. Yeah, I'm just so thrilled that everybody's going to get a chance to experience Jesus in this way, and invite a friend that doesn't know the Lord, invite a friend that's been like, oh, I don't know about these Jesus movies and stuff like this. It is so palatable for everybody, and it is a welcome invitation for people to understand the gospel of Jesus in a way that is not offensive, but is beautifully told, cinematic, and fun.
When I read the script, I was totally enamored by it.
I'd like to tell you a story, son.
So this is a Dickens hidden gem.
It is a great story.
And so I would hope that people would go out, buy a ticket for somebody else too as well, and share it and pay it forward, because that's really what the angel model is all about as well.
Bless you. Thank you so much, James. It's been such a joy to connect with you, and fascinating to hear all about your career and what you've been working on and what you do.
God bless you, Sarah. Thank you so much.
God bless.